We have been looking for an assistant associate pastor for quite some time. And at the end of 2019, Pastor Daniel McCoy felt the call to leave here and to go to Nevada to help in a church there. And so in January of 2020, we began the search. At our annual meeting, we talked about the need for a search or for an associate pastor, and we had Jake and Gigi and Jonathan and Emily who were going to take over some of the responsibilities there, but we knew that long term we were going to need a permanent associate pastor. And so we began the search, primarily pastor, began to search. And so in the spring, Pastor Wood made a number of contacts and inquiries. He had identified a potential candidate that we thought might be the one. However, after some time of discussion, that potential candidate decided to stay in California at the ministry where he was already involved. And of course, shortly after that, COVID came along, and that made it more difficult to continue the search. And so it has really slowed things down from our perspective. Looking back, God knew it was going to happen, and God was working through all of that and making things happen in His time. And so Pastor continued to reach out to people, talking to camp directors and other pastors and state representatives and professors at colleges. In fact, visited a couple of colleges, Faith and Maranatha, and was just searching for the right one. And then at the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021, instead of giving us a potential candidate, God gave us two. What a shock. After all the time of not finding anyone who was interested in coming to Muscatine and ministering here, we had a couple of men who were interested. One of those, however, caught Pastor completely off guard because one of them was Jordan Allen, Pastor and Lori's son-in-law. And so that made things difficult for Pastor. In fact, he deliberated and debated over whether he should even let us consider Jordan and Shannon. And so he came to the conclusion that he would give us the resumes of both, but that he would not be involved in the selection, so that he would in no way influence. So in February, we began the sort of official process, and we used the same method that we have used in the past for associate pastors and for our lead pastors. It's a system that Pastor Tim Capon had developed and that we have used successfully. And since one of my pet peeves is people that put up PowerPoint slides and then read everything on the PowerPoint slide, I'm not going to do that. But these are the steps that we are going through in order to identify the one that God is calling. And that's an important point that we have tried to keep in mind throughout this process, is we're not trying to find the man that we like best. We're trying to find the man that God is leading to come here and to be our next associate pastor. And so we began in March, early March. We sent out questionnaires to both of the candidates. They replied with their responses. There was a bit of back and forth with a couple of items. We went on in the end of March then, and again, as we're going through this process, we're looking for things that say, hey, this is not the one to consider. And so with the questionnaires, everything continued to look good. And so we began doing reference checks, and we started looking at things that might come up that other people would know about them. Also, into March and 1st of April, we finalized the details of the job description. What are we looking for in an associate pastor? And then in early May, we began our interviews with the references. 2 or 3 deacons would get on a phone call with each of the references, and we went through a number of questions. There were some that were prepared, again, a part of this system that Pastor Capon has come up with, and then those would lead to other things. And so we spent several hours on the phone with these references so that we could get an understanding of the candidates. And after that, we discussed. We got together as a group and discussed what we had heard and what the candidates themselves had said. And after a great deal of discussion and time in prayer individually and then getting back together later on, we selected or settled on Jordan Allen as our candidate that we would desire to present to the church. And so last fall, in preparation for this year's soccer camp, God providentially led Pastor to ask Jordan if he would be willing to come and be a speaker for the soccer camp. Long before Jordan had sent his resume in, long before we had any idea that he would even be on our radar. And so since he was going to be here, we used that opportunity for the deacons and wives, pastors and wives, to meet with Jordan and Shannon, and we interrogated them some more. And tried to cover all of the possibilities of things that might be important and might be difficult. And so we spent an afternoon with them. And so we made the decision to extend an invitation to Jordan to be a candidate for a new associate pastor. And so next Sunday, we will take the next step. And that is that we have asked Pastor Capon to come. He's our state representative. One of the main functions that he serves in that position is in helping churches with selecting pastors and understanding and guiding us to know God's will. And in this case, we have an unusual circumstance with the family relationship. And so we want Pastor Capon to come and to address that with us. There's going to be challenges for Pastor. There's going to be challenges for us as a church. And our overarching goal here is that we, first of all, know who it is that God wants us to call, and then that we do it in a manner so that it can be the most successful possible. We don't have all the details of the candidate Sunday established yet. We're still working on that, and over the next few weeks, we'll let you know when the time will be. He'll be here, excuse me, so we have an opportunity to hear him speak. He'll be working with the youth, and we'll have some time to interact with him so that you're able to meet him and get to know him, ask questions. We'll have opportunities to fill in details and get answers to questions. And then, of course, at the conclusion, we'll gather as a church family and decide. We'll vote on whether or not we want to call Jordan and Shannon as our next associate pastor. So what we would ask you is the same that we have been doing over these past months, and that's to pray. Is this the one that God wants us to call? And we're confident that if we have sought God's will and desire His leading, that we'll make the right decision.